Bernard Borghei is the co-founder and executive vice president of operations at Vertical Bridge. And I don't know if you realize this, Bernard, but you're responsible for the daily operations, engineering services, regulatory compliance, vendor management, and human resources, including the company's health and safety program. Did you know you had 30 years of experience in wireless and telecommunications infrastructure?
I try not to think about it because it makes me feel old, but okay.
You can do all this and still have a smile. We're going to get to how convergence enables the edge, which is the topic of our discussion. But I also want to mention that you direct Vertical Bridge's ESG program, including status as a carbon neutral company, which is fantastic, your renewable energy solutions, and efforts to ensure a diverse and equitable workforce. All wonderful things to mention.
Thank you.
Speaking of convergence and enabling the edge, how do you define the edge?
So to put it simply, first of all, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while because
it's been a while, yes.
Quarantine and everything, and good to be on with you. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody today. To really simplify what is edge, as far as I'm concerned, for me, edge is a distributed computing model. Basically, what you're trying to do is to start having computation take place at the physical locations or close to the physical locations where the data is not only being collected, but also being analyzed. And so to me, edge, could have various different layers of definitions, being the closest point to your subscribers, to your end users, or to your device where you're collecting and analyzing the data. But it really, for me, boils down to the fact that it's a distributed computing model.
When you talk about defining the edge, and it possibly leads to matters of the physical positioning of the equipment, the electronic assets, data centers, and micro centers. How is that folded into the Vertical Bridge activity, with an eye to serving your principal customers, the wireless carriers?
So, if you solely look at it from the Vertical Bridge's perspective, we have all of these sites across the country, over 370,000 locations that we either own or have management rights to. And these are telecom infrastructure ready sites, meaning that there is space available to put the radio electronics safely and securely on them. There is power available. And now with the convergence taking place, there's now fiber available. And really, when you look at what it takes to bring the convergence concept together, and edge being a portion or part of that convergence discussion and architecture, that's what you need as a tower company, infrastructure providing company, a location that can be safe and secure, has enough power to install the equipment and run it, maintain it, and grow it, scalable power, and also have connectivity fiber available for the backhaul and connection back to the core network. And so that's the role, the physical role that Vertical Bridge plays. But for us, it's beyond that, because being part of the Digital Colony portfolio of companies, we have sister companies that are, data centers, Data Bank, and Vantage. We have companies that provide fiber, Zayo being the largest privately held fiber provider in the country. And then we have edge solution providers like Edge Presence, a company that I'm very excited about. I've worked with their executive teams for the past close to 2 years. And I'm proud to say I lobbied to make sure that company becomes part of our portfolio, because I really believe in their vision and their execution strength for the model that they've adopted. So when you take all of those companies and you put us in there, that's when we become meaningful to our clients. We truly become the total package of a converged architecture solution provider for any telecom infrastructure company or telecom solution carrier company out there.
Bernard, I'm curious how that constellation of companies works together. Colony Capital is the overarching organization. There's Digital Colony within that, Vertical Bridge, Extenet Systems, is that part of your
Yes,
group?
of
Extenet
course.
Systems, Edge Presence. Some of these are public companies, some are private companies, partially owned, wholly owned. How does that all fit together to allow you to bring together the resources to serve those customers?
So I'll take you back to 7 years ago when we had exited Global Tower Partners, and we went to our first WIA meeting after the exit had taken place. And Mark Ganzi, our chairman, was the keynote speaker. And the question to him was, what is next? And he got up and he said, convergence. And everybody looked at us and said, what does that mean?
That was 7 years ago?
That was 7 years ago. Vertical Bridge became 7 years old, January 14th of this year. So, and since then, we've been talking about convergence. And we're proud to say that our vision has continuously come to fruition, and it evolves, and it's been extremely well received by investors and our clients, across the globe. And so the way we play is that each one of those companies that you mentioned has a specific business model and has a specific role. So we do have our swim lanes. I am never going to be an edge solution provider. That's edge presence. That is their forte. That's their expertise. I'm not going to get into design of small cells and bring in fiber. That's Zayo and Extenet. I'm not going to get into data center business. Raul Martinez on the data bank side, and Cyril on the Vantage side, they're the experts in that. But what Alex, Mike Belsky, myself, and our partners in Vertical Bridge do better than all of the other guys is the tower space, the real estate that requires to build these telecom sites, be it, through the acquisitions or through our development program. And so each one of us has that role. We understand that the value that we bring to our clients is always increased when we work together and we offer turnkey solutions. We are capable and we've executed well as profitable single entities on our own. Every one of those companies is hugely profitable today. But when it comes to where the convergence is taking us and what carriers like Dish are looking for, an operator without the legacy network of an LTE or UMP or 3G that's looking to launch with a standalone 5G network can really take full advantage of a converged solution offering from a portfolio of companies like us. And that's really why we can work so well together, because each one of us fits in that piece of the puzzle that's required to provide that turnkey solution as far as a converged platform is looking for.
I've certainly heard that some carriers are looking for those turnkey solutions. Maybe most of them are. I'm not sure. You might have a feel for that. And I wondered how Vertical Bridge, together with its affiliated companies, brings all that together to a turnkey solution. How does that fit into the mix? Which customers prefer that? Which are willing to go it alone? Is there a trend in one direction or another?
Well, I think sitting here today, you have all of the above. You have established operators such as AT&T and Verizon that have their own fiber network and would rather rely on their fiber backbone, but still work with us when it comes to site locations and have engagements on small cells, or macro sites. Whether it's for expansion or densification of their LTE and their 5G networks. And there are some other discussions taking place within the data center and edge aspect of their strategy, even though they have other strategic partnerships aligned with Microsoft as well. But you have to understand, we're the physical infrastructure providers. We're not the software, and we're not the sort of the electronic side of it. So even for somewhere like Verizon or AT&T, there's always a room or place for a company like us or a portfolio like Colonies to partner up with them. And then you have other companies like T-Mobile and Dish that are what I would say purely wireless companies without a landline legacy. So and their type of requirements and what they're looking for are different. Still driving towards the same goal, building and maintaining extremely competitive wireless networks based on the 5G standard. But sort of approaching it differently, where they're more willing to work with different fiber providers because they don't have their own fiber company. It's never going to be one size fits all, and it's never going to be the same model. But I think that's where the advantage of a portfolio like ours comes in, because when you have all of the pieces of the puzzle, you can tailor it to your client's needs and requirements.
You spoke of the vertical bridge providing the physical space. What changes have there been, if any, in your strategy in acquiring space, developing space, enlarging space, providing power to the spaces that you make available? I have a tendency, because of my background, to think of telecom towers, but a lot of what you do would be access to sites that are not telecom towers. They're rooftop sites, small cells, the sides of buildings, things like that. What steps do you have to take to make enough space available to the carriers so that they can be accommodated with this convergence?
So one of the things that we've done that has really paid dividends for us in Vertical Bridge is the acquisition of all of the broadcast sites. The iHeart portfolio, the Cumulus, Alpha, Digity, all those other portfolios that we basically have bought over the past 7 years. And the reason I say this to you is because broadcast sites come with a lot of land. And when you have those radio and TV stations there's plenty of power, HVAC, and fiber available because they're already transmitting heavy signals to cover their networks. And the other aspect of it is that I think where a lot of people did not consider this is, 60 years ago when you built those FM towers, they were in rural areas. Now the cities are right around them. The cities have expanded. So we have now about 1,700 broadcast towers across the country, where they each have anywhere between 2 to 8 to 10 acres of land, plenty of power, plenty of HVAC, plenty of fiber available. And yet they're now in what is considered urban, suburban areas where a lot of these densifications or, the early on 5G deployments are taking place. And so if you want to go and put down your edge computing equipment and shelters, where else would you want to be, except where there's land, there's power, there's fiber available, and you're close to where the population centers are, because that's where the carriers are really driving the initial deployment of edge for content, for data, analytics that are going on. So for us, that has been a pleasant benefit of owning the largest broadcast portfolio in the country. The rest of our sites, we've always considered multi-carriers. The LTE deployment really changed this landscape. Nobody was relying on T1s anymore. Everybody started bringing fiber. So we became very focused on making sure that it's not just so much the physical availability of the structure, but having the information, being able to quickly turn around and tell your carrier who are the 4 fiber providers at this site and who are the other 4 fiber providers at the site that's 2 miles down the road, allowing your customers to make good, intelligent, yet quick decisions. So we've put a lot of focus into not just building sites that have enough space for multiple carriers, but also making sure we have gathered all of the appropriate intelligence so they can come to us with one question, one form, get all the information that they need in order to make their decision whether that site will work for them or not.
How many people in your organization does it take to handle all this? This is a phenomenal amount of service that you're providing.
Right. So look, we're about 230 people today, but we have a nationwide network that we've built up over the last 30 years of being in this business with various partners and vendors that we've been working with. It's no secret that we have had the most active new build program in the country for the last 4 years. We have built more new towers in the United States than any other tower company has done. And with the acquisition of EcoSite last fourth quarter of last year, there really isn't anybody who even comes close to our network of productivity when it comes to building new towers. So we have plenty of established partners that help us, accomplish this. But here's the thing I would tell you is that we entered this business with that perspective in mind, because as I mentioned earlier, 7 years ago, we talked about convergence, right? So
Yes.
when you start collecting and gathering that data, and when you invest time and resources into setting up your procedures and systems right from day one, and you collect that data from day one, it never becomes an insurmountable task, because it becomes part of your routine process. You start collecting data on every side from the moment you get going, the way we did. So we were never forced to go back and try to collect data of the past 10 years. We started Vertical Bridge knowing that we needed to make sure we have every piece of data, because 7 years ago it was towards the second part of LTE densification. So we knew exactly what the carriers were looking for. We just made sure that we set up the procedures and the systems to allow our employees to collect all the data from the start and put it in the database for us to be able to refer to.
I'll come back to your comments about the broadcast facility acquisitions. I was not in the room when you folks were discussing that, and I must admit, I was a little puzzled why a company would want to acquire such tall towers. Now, obviously, it's possible to put cellular and other antennas at lower levels on those towers, particularly FM towers. Maybe a little bit more difficult with AM, but FM certainly. And these remarks you made about acquiring the land and having the power availability, because these sites require a lot of power for their transmitters and such. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I've also been aware, because of my background, the encroachment of developed areas on antenna sites, particularly AM stations, which virtually are locked in where they are now. There's hardly any place where they can go. Right. So those sites have become very valuable for their space. Makes good sense.
Exactly.
What's the mixture of readiness? To what extent do you as an antenna provider plan ahead and install equipment in anticipation of the convergence and the computing? And to what extent do you rely on the wireless carriers to provide their own equipment? So some of them may wish to have their own micro centers. They might want you to provide them.
We don't get involved. So with the services side, when we build a site, we make sure that there is power available for the number of carriers that we've designed the site for. There are plenty of conduits available to bring the fiber in. And the rest of the maintenance of the site, the compound, the space, the availability, access road, the fencing, all that stuff is just general standard practices that I think most other companies in our space, execute every day. We don't get involved with telling our carriers what they should do as far as their electronics and architecture. At the end of the day, the Vertical Bridge model is that we are a real estate company in the technology sector. We provide the land, we provide a secure compound, we provide access to power, and we give you the fiber to bring whoever your preferred fiber provider is. And we work with you to identify the appropriate location for your need within our compound to deploy your equipment. Whether you want to go with your, Nokia and Ericsson or somebody else, that's the carrier's choice. That is not our business. We don't get involved with it. So the relationship between our clients and us is really conflict-free, because we're not pushing services on our end, and we're not pushing any specific gear. We're neutral when it comes to that.
Conflict-free.
I know it's hard to believe, but I think we've achieved it over the last 7 years. It's because you have to really understand what is your business model. I don't see an incremental value from getting engaged on services if that is going to lead to any conflict between myself and my clients. That's not our forte. I'm good at providing real estate. quality sort of location with the requirements that the carriers have. And they're very good at building their networks and maintaining and controlling the airwaves that they've been licensed for. So it's the best of the both worlds.
Maybe some of the elements of convergence could be expressed as the antenna sites, the fiber, and the data center aspect of it. There's a fourth that some are talking about, which would be the shared radio equipment, Open RAN, and possibly the antenna site providers installing the radio equipment and renting the space on the radios to the carriers. Is that an element that is part of the future that could come to pass, or is
right
that less likely?
Well, look, first of all, in my view, Open RAN is different than shared RAN. I think Open RAN refers to a standard, to be able to bring on third-party applications and content and services.
I agree. That's better expressed as shared RAN. Right. Yes.
Shared RAN is something that we've seen in Europe. Some of the European governments for specific license awards of spectrum and for sort of attempting to what I would say close down the digital divide in their countries and encouraging carriers for rural network deployments have mandated certain levels of shared RAN. I think it becomes harder when you have such mature legacy networks that Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T already have.
Yes.
It becomes hard for them to sort of get to that point. I'm not sitting here worrying about what a shared network standard or protocol could do in the US because of the vastness of the market that these carriers have to invest and deploy in. And the fact that when you look at it, we always talk about everybody's deploying 5G and we're in an unlimited world. Therefore, how are these carriers going to differentiate their services, and their ARPUs are under pressure or they're not, all of that stuff. But the way I look at it is that when you really look at how Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and now Dish are approaching their customer base, there are very specific distinguished features that they offer, and their network becomes the enabler of those distinguished features. And so I think a shared RAN concept is something that, unless it's regulatorily sort of mandated for the future awards of spectrum, that the carriers would probably be sort of looking at it as is more complex and complicated than continuing to densify and deploy their own networks and competing the way they've been competing.
With the constellation of companies under the Colony Capital umbrella, you have a lot of sister and related companies to draw from for services and products. Are there opportunities for vendors to do business with Vertical Bridge beyond that? Products and services that you require that you're unable to obtain through your network of related companies? Absolutely.
Look, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we don't do services. So if we're building a site, we have our design engineers and construction managers, but we're not the ones out there pouring the concrete or erecting the tower. And I can tell you that on the multiple deployments that we've done with Edge Presence, they do the design, they do the configuration of the edge shelter, because each location is different. But they have the subcontractors that come and bring the shelter and install it, pour the foundation. And the same thing on Extenet side and Zayo side. They have vast network of GCs that they use to deploy the small cells and fibers. The beauty of it is that people do hit us up on LinkedIn or email us, and they have certain services. And every time I read a description, I'm like, well, in reality, you should be talking to so-and-so, because that's what they're focused on. And we make, introductions. So yes, there's plenty of opportunities for vendors to work with us. I can't even begin to tell you the number of approved vendors that just Vertical Bridge on its own has, let alone every one of the other companies that.
Numbers in the hundreds, perhaps?
Easily. If you look at, we utilize both Aveda and Comply as part of the industry best practices to qualify vendors and to make sure that they remain qualified and certified with their trainings and NWSA certifications and all that stuff. And if you look at the list of approved vendors on both platforms, it is easily in the hundreds for Vertical Bridge. And I'm sure if you talk to the sister companies, it's equally the same for them as well.
Do you see differences in the operations in urban versus rural, where Vertical Bridge maybe takes care of more of the operations in one part of the country than another?
Not really. We always have our scope of work. We know what we're good at and what we're supposed to deliver, and that's what we sort of stick to. So no, I mean, look, building a site is building a site. You gotta do the entitlement. You gotta get the ground leases. You gotta go through all of the permitting, the NEPAs and the SHPOs and the zoning and all that stuff. So the scope really doesn't change. The complexity may a little bit depending on where you're building. But we're pretty disciplined to stick to what we're good at.
Is there anything that causes you some worry or concern over the next year or 2 years regarding the wireless infrastructure business?
That's a good question. Look, we've talked a lot about. I don't know if I would say concerns, but we as a country have talked now for a good while about an infrastructure bill that will allow us to close the digital divide. And I believe, and I'm not getting political, but I believe that the pandemic and the lockdown really showed that there is a digital divide in the rural parts of the country. And I think we in this sector, in the wireless communication, have been extremely fortunate. If you go back to 2008, that recession hardly had any impact on us. If you go back to last year, with everybody going home and utilizing their wireless devices even more, this sector has not really been negatively impacted as compared to the airlines or hospitality or cruise ships and stuff like that. So I think we do owe it to our fellow citizens to do what we can to really deploy these networks in the rural areas, find the appropriate way to make the business model work so we can really deploy and get the citizens on the rural side of the country access to these broadband services. And, one of the things Alex and I have said is that you look at what China did when it came to giving 5G spectrum to their carriers. The Chinese government said that in order to expedite deployment of 5G, I'm not going to charge you for the spectrum I'm giving you. Take that CapEx and put it into deploying your 5G networks. We did the exact opposite thing. We just finished our C-band license and got $94 billion from the bidders. And then we took 93 billion of that and are trying to put it in an infrastructure bill and give it back to people to say, go ahead and deploy the broadband network in rural areas. Well, maybe if you hadn't taken $94 billion from the carriers, they would have, instead you would have said, I'm not going to charge you as much for the C-band license, but the C-band license comes with these requirements. You're going to have to cover X amount of the rural parts of the US within the next 5 years. Maybe that would have been a different approach to try. So I'm not going to say I have a business concern. I think we are in a very good spot as a sector, as an industry. I don't believe 5G is anywhere close to being here. We have plenty of growth room ahead of us. The content, the solutions, the applications haven't even been developed or rolled out. But I think we have duties and obligations to the country that we can do better in a private and public partnership that hopefully we'll continue to focus on and move forward toward.
I recognize what you're saying. The carriers are tugged in two ways. They have a requirement to build out, but they also have to come up with the money to pay for what they bid for. Right. How does that affect their business prospects for expanding their wireless infrastructure?
Yeah, well, so if you listen to, look at it in two ways. traditionally or historically, every time there was a big spectrum auction, the carrier capex expenditure sort of on the network side, on the infrastructure side, would slow down for about 12 to 18 months, because that's also the amount of time that it would take for the radio and all the gear to be ready to accommodate the new spectrum. This time around, pleasantly surprised, because even though Verizon was the biggest winner and bidder on the C-band auction, they were pretty adamant that it wasn't going to impact the capex that they had committed to spend on their network this year. And I think yesterday they also announced that they're still on track to hit all of their goals. And I think AT&T has done the same thing as well. So going through the C-band auction, we were preparing ourselves that the carriers, for the amount of money that everybody was hearing was being bet on those spectrum licenses, that we were expecting that there would be a slowdown on network investment. But coming out of it and hearing the CEOs of the, two of the four companies talking about it, that no, we're still committed to spending the capex that we set for this year, that's great news. And I can tell you that sitting here today, looking at the co-location applications that are coming in, it's true. They have not held back, and they are spending the money that they said in densifying and expanding their networks. What it means for them next year, who knows? Depends on the economy and how long more we're in this pandemic situation, where the country is. But right now, I don't have any warning signs to worry about it.
Well, that sounds very, very positive. That sounds very positive.
Wow.
Alyssa, I see you just joined us on the screen, so I want to say thank you to Bernard Borghei, the co-founder and executive vice president of operations at Vertical Bridge. And Alyssa, is our next step perhaps some questions, or to move to the next session?
Yeah, well, listen, Don, as usual, you've done such a thorough and engaging job in working with Bernard to share what's going on from their perspective, and to learn a little bit more and get give the market a view as to what's happening there. Bernard, thank you so much for being so forthcoming and welcoming to our program and to sharing insights. It's all great, and we all need each other, to be able to do this. You've got to.
Alyssa, I will acknowledge your comment as usual, but actually this is my first time of participating in an event like this, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to have as a guest than Bernard. So thank you, Bernard.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Well, thank you for inviting me. Thanks, Don, for partnering up with me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody today.